So while there's all of this talk that, there could be a hit on a nuclear site in Pakistan, it's not that simple. And of course, India has made it very clear that we didn't hit Kirana Hills, which is where allegedly all the nukes are stored. But let me explain to you how these nuclear sites are protected. They have multi-layered protection, as is the international norm. So they have hardened bunkers. So essentially, these are warheads that are being stored. They're kept in underground silos or sites, if you will, to withstand any conventional attack. So anything that hits over ground, it won't really affect these sites that are right underneath, beneath ground level, underground, kept there for safety reasons. There are physical barriers too. There are blast-proof doors, there are shock absorbers, all put as fail-safes again. So multiple steps that are taken, and this is essentially internationally recognized safety protocol. Also a radiation shield. So the warheads are encased in multiple layers. Even if there's a hit, there's a very small chance really of a leak, a radiation leak happening, because they're encased in multiple layers, so this thick essentially. And so for any leak to happen, it's virtually impossible. But what happens if a nuke storage site is actually hit? A couple of things you will immediately notice. There's something called the dirty bomb effect, which is that radioactive material could then be scattered in that entire area, particularly plutonium dust, which is toxic, that could spread. There is, of course, a radiological hazard. Despite the fact that there's no nuclear explosion, it doesn't work that if a missile hits one particular storage area, that means you've got a nuclear explosion. Not at all the case because of the steps I told you. So keeping that in mind, there will be some radiological hazard, yes, but not the kind of impact you'd see with a nuclear attack. Very different, the two. Also contamination, and this is perhaps the biggest issue, that there will be invisible contamination happening because of radiation. Air, soil, water, all of that could get contaminated. Nearby areas could become uninhabitable as well. Now, the reason we put the spotlight on all of this is because you've had Pakistan going ahead and now claiming that India has been the aggressor as far as nukes go. You've not seen any of this actually happen in Pakistan. So we'll be getting you those details also about how Pakistan's been fact-check of all their claims of their nuke storage being hit. And let's also break down for you our nuclear strategy. What is India's nuclear strategy? When do we actually deploy nukes versus Pakistan? Again, here you'll see that Pakistan is the aggressor in the sense that we have a very clear mandated policy put in place of no first use. Pakistan has no such rules. They have rejected the no first use policy. There are countries who vowed of no first use policy. Pakistan is not in that list, whereas we are. So what that also means is essentially we've ruled out completely, officially, that we will not use nukes first. No matter what, we will not strike first. Pakistan has a policy that very clearly says we have the option to strike first. So that first strike option is still very much available, which is why they've been resorting to all of the comments that they've been saying. As far as retaliation goes, however, India is very clear that if you hit us, we reserve the right to retaliate hard and retaliate in full measure. So that's very clear. Pakistan's stand here is very different because they have essentially the first strike or strike first option. They believe in early use to deter aggression. And here's where you see a clear difference in India's nuke strategy versus Pakistan's. It's because Pakistan constantly talks about, nukes, and they've been doing this for the last many weeks. And then you have their policy, which is about strike first, that India is saying world bodies should also take note. Sandeep Unitan is joining us live with more on this. Sandeep, you've of course seen all the reactions that have been coming in over the last many weeks from some of the most, highest officials in the Pakistan government talking about using nukes against India and whatnot. And that's why there's a growing chorus here in the country, in India, for international bodies also to take note. Even the United Nations, Sandeep, has been found wanting here.
Akshita, Pakistan's nuclear weapons are the only technological achievement they have achieved in 78 years of their existence as an independent nation. Now, while in the early years of Pakistan's existence from 71 to the 80s, it was about protecting the country from being further divided like what happened in 1971. It was essentially a means of ensuring national survival. But somewhere in the 90s, the generals who control the nuclear weapons program started using it for many other reasons. The biggest reason they used it for was for nuclear blackmail. They used the nuclear weapons to shield their conventional arsenal and, most importantly, their terrorism. The terrorism that they inflicted on India was protected by the shield of nuclear weapons, which means that we could not strike back at them conventionally for fear of them going nuclear. So they've always been rattling this nuclear saber for decades now. From the 80s to the 90s, and of course after they became a declared nuclear weapons state after 98, this has been accelerated. So their entire game plan, their entire strategy is to show that they are irrational. They will use the nuclear weapon at the slightest provocation, and that is one way they've deterred India from using its conventional weapons. And more recently, they've also used nuclear weapons to tell the West that, you know, we are too important to fail. If Pakistan breaks up, for instance, the jihadi elements will get hold of nuclear weapons, and they use that to extract concessions from the West, to get aid, to get military supplies, all of those things. So their nuclear weapons program is a very bizarre kind of, strategy for them to use it for many other reasons. And of course, recently, they've been stepping up their rhetoric of threatening to use nuclear weapons. And they did the most irrational thing a few days back. Before our 10th May strike, they used ballistic missiles against India, Akshita, and they fired it at a number of locations. One, of course, at Sirsa, the airbase in Haryana. The Fateh 2 missile was used. Extremely irresponsible, because no nuclear weapon state has fired a ballistic missile at another nuclear weapon state. And this Pakistan did. And it could have triggered off unimaginable consequences, because if we had something like a ready-to-launch alert state, it would have meant nuclear holocaust. But Pakistan has always been playing this role of a irrational actor, and which is why we struck so hard on the 10th of May to send out a message to them not to escalate the situation. We hit two of their key bases, Chaklala and Sargoda, which are very key to their nuclear weapons movements, air bases which they near where they store nuclear weapons. We claim not to have hit the actual sites, but we have sent out a very strong message to Pakistan to desist from nuclear blackmail, to desist from rattling the nuclear saber, as they've been doing for decades now. So I think Pakistan's entire strategy has been called out. And today, the defense minister's statements of Pakistan being an irresponsible power, unworthy of holding the nuclear weapons, and he's in fact gone a step ahead and pushed for the denuclearization of Pakistan. And this has been the government of India's stance as well, to paint Pakistan as a rogue nation with nuclear weapons, exactly the way North Korea is, Akshita.
You know, one is the rhetoric. The second is, as you pointed out, Sandeep, the provocations, almost waiting and itching for things to escalate. Both show you that Pakistan is not a responsible nation, and they cannot responsibly handle nuclear weapons, which is the challenge here. And hopefully international bodies will see that too. Thanks very much, Sandeep, for joining us with your perspective on this.